Tom, welcome.
Hello Caesar.
How are you? All good?
Very well, how are you?
Nice. Very happy to have you here today. And of course, Matt is with us as well. So this is the first time that we film in free. This car will be very special for us as well because we are starting something new at Dazzle Ages as well, kind of selling cars, selling classic cars. And there's no better way than starting with this one that represents a lot for us. And having you here as well. So again, loads of firsts at this point in time. So welcome again, and let's talk about this car.
Well, this is a Saab 900 Turbo Ruby Edition, one of the last 150 made, and I've always loved the Saab Turbo. Back in the early 1990s, I was really fortunate. My company car was a Sierra Cosworth.
Oh yeah.
And a friend of mine got a new job, and he got as his company car a black Turbo Saab T16 and brought it over.
All right.
And I realised just how much better they were made, how much nicer they were to drive. Don't get me wrong, the Ford was absolutely fantastic, but it was built to a price and was frankly quite crude.
Yeah.
And then I got into his car and I just could not believe how nice it was. Roll forward to 2020, it was lockdown and my son was living with me at the time, and I thought, well, it'd be really nice to do a project together. And so found this Ruby through a forum. The chap had it for, I think he'd had it for 18 years, 17 or 18 years. And he had ill health and he was looking to move it on. We went, picked it up, brought it back and started restoring it. And then as these things go, through a combination of new job for me and getting divorced, the time to do the job disappeared.
Oh, disappeared actually. Yeah, true.
I ran out of time to work on it. But
sorry, I'll cut that later.
yeah. So due to a number of factors, I sort of ran out of time. We ran out of time due to divorce, new job and so on. But having started, I realised how sound the car was underneath. It needed cosmetic bits and pieces. It needed a respray. It needed some bits and pieces fixing. But fundamentally, it was a good car, and it seemed a terrible shame not to finish it.
Yeah.
And so I got in touch with a company in Hinckley called 2 Refinish, who specialise in doing work on Saabs. And Simon and I came up with a plan to do a complete restoration on the car.
It's pristine, isn't it?
And which we did over the next couple of years. And we sort of photographed every single stage of it so that you can see that it's I hope to think it's like, as good as when it left the factory.
How the passion started, because of course our channel is all about that, cars, owners and their passion. So how did you get into it?
I think it's a fairly common story. My dad was into his cars. He didn't have an awful lot of money, but he always liked having something a little bit unusual. And I can remember he had, I mean, we'll gloss over the embarrassing Allegro, but we'll go straight for, he had a Renault 20 at the time when everybody was driving around in Cavaliers and Cortinas. He had a Renault, and then he bought a Lancia Beta as his car. And suddenly then he went into BMWs, and that passion that he had for his cars kind of stayed with me. And when I passed my driving test, the first car I bought with my own money was a little Triumph Spitfire, which I then spent a summer doing up. And you can tell how well they were built because even back in the 1980s, the car was 10 years old and was already falling apart. It was terrible. But from then, I've just really enjoyed doing cars.
That's it, yeah. And this is the important thing about us, is the fact that what brings us together as a community, as car lovers. And it seems to be as a common place, as you said, kind of our parents and father and this and that, and kind of how we get into restoring cars and loving them and making them part of our lives. Usually I would ask you now, okay, what have you changed? But as you said, you did it
the whole thing.
Completely whole thing.
The
right?
whole thing, yeah.
And what was the most challenging part for you, you think so?
I think, for me, I concentrated on doing some mechanical bits around and stripping down the front end and so on, and then ran out of time. But speaking with Simon, when we took it apart, I suppose the most challenging part was making sure that all of the little trim bits and all of the bits were original and good. Things like the dashboard, making sure that it fitted correctly, because they're prone to cracking in the sun. And all the little plastic grills and so on, they go brittle in the sun as well. And then making sure that all the bright work and so on was correct. unusually, because the Ruby edition is a little bit different to most of the turbos in that it doesn't have the plastic side body kit. So we didn't have to find those trim pieces, but on the plus side, the body kit can trap moisture and cause an awful lot of problems behind it.
Oh yeah.
So it meant that the side of the car itself was very, very sound.
So that's a good point to introduce you, Matt, in the conversation, because you have 3 Saabs, right? Saab guy, and you have, of course, your 900 turbo as well. So what's the main difference between yours and this one, and why do you think this one is so special as well?
Essentially, they are the same car. It's just the body kit that differs. On the Ruby, they thought they'd do more of a, I think it's more of a luxury version, isn't it, than the standard T16S. So they probably thought, we don't need the body kit. We'll have a nice luxury version. And like you say, the body kit traps moisture and causes rust. You think you've got a great T16S until you take the body kit off, and then you'll see what's left underneath is generally rusty. With this car, of course, there's no rust, there's no water traps, there's no problem. Essentially, though, they are the same car, exactly the same in every way, apart from this being one of the last special edition 150 has lots of nice additions to it that the other T16s don't have. The interior is pretty much unique to this car, and of course the paintwork, this mica red, was only, well, it's a ruby colour, hence it's called the Ruby. It's the only car that had this colour. It's a lovely machine and very rare. So what number's this one out of the 150?
This is number 108 of 150.
Yeah.
And according to the register, there are about 30 left.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So we're talking at the end of the development of the 900. So it's been continuously enhanced by Saab for 14 years. So this is the last year or so of production. So now it's almost perfect in every way. Every little problem has been ironed out. The car's got everything that you could ever want. And we're under GM ownership at this point now. So General Motors now owns Saab. So of course the replacement for this one was a General Motors car, basically a Cavalier on a Cavalier platform.
Shame, isn't it?
But this is the last of the true Saabs.
Yeah, and I can see the interior is very different from yours, isn't it? It starts with the steering wheel and how it looks, and kind of the whole thing is just slightly different.
The fabric, the half leather and half fabric trim, the fabric is only on this car, and it's called what?
It's an Italian wool fabric called Zegna.
Zegna.
Yeah, and it was only used on these 150 cars.
And it's incredibly rare and hard to find in good shape. So, and it's mint.
The history of the car, right? So the previous owners, what do you know about it?
So I mentioned that the previous owner had it for 17, 18 years. He was an electrician and ran it as his daily car for that time until he became too ill to run it. Prior to that, the car was first registered as a company car in 1993 and run as a company car for 2.5 years. And then the director who who had the car as his company car bought it from the company. He liked it that much and ran it for a further 5 years. And one of the things he did was, when he bought the car from the company, he took it to Abbott Racing, who are quite a well-known Saab specialist and tuner, and he looked at their prices, and pretty much from what I can tell, he ticked pretty much every box that they had for upgrades. So when he bought the car, he had the stainless steel sports exhaust fitted to it. It's got the Abbott Racing uprated cams, intercooler. He ticked the box for the uprated ECU. Now these cars came with a standard with what they call the red box ECU, which was the one that was fitted to the Carlsson version, which upped the power from 175 to 185 horsepower. This was supposed to bring it up to over 200 horsepower to compete with the likes of the Sierra Cosworth. I'm not sure that this one still has that ECU in it. It certainly has a red box ECU, and it feels like an ordinary sort of late T16 with a red box in it. And those were the sort of modifications that he had done to the car at the time. I think he also had the uprated suspension fitted, the uprated springs, which are still on the car. It's got the period correct Abbott Racing mods to it.
The Abbott raced Saabs. They were like the go-to guys. Providing your checkbook was big enough, they were the people to choose, because they were very good, but
very expensive.
Very expensive.
And why are you selling it?
Unfortunately,
that's a good question.
It's a good question. Unfortunately, my father passed away a couple of years ago, and I've been keeping the car in his my parents' garage. My mum's now looking to sell the house, and it's
Oh, right.
just too nice to leave sitting outside. I don't.
No, you don't
I
want
would.
it
I want
outside.
it to go to somebody who will keep it indoors and look after it. It's a great car. You could use it as a daily driver.
this is
It's
a daily
incredibly
driver, yeah,
reliable,
daily driver.
but it's too nice just to have it sat outside and not being used.
That's the beauty, I think, of this car. It's because it's been done to such a high level. You've got a show car if you want.
Yeah.
You've also got a daily car. You can just use this every day. It'll be absolutely fine.
And in fact, it was at this year's NEC show
Yeah.
for the celebration of the 40
that's
years of the Saab Turbo.
Was it the NEC?
This was at the NEC as an example of one of the very last Saab classic turbos
And
produced.
he has got quite a nice car collection additionally to this as well.
All right, cool. This is fascinating, isn't it? Because it's the second Saab that we have, and we only have 6, 7 kind of episodes. So I'm starting to like Saabs as well. I may buy it.
Excellent.
It's got Italian cloth inside.
It has
Come on.
some Italian stuff inside, so here we go. Yeah, maybe. One thing that is different from your car is the spoiler, isn't it? This is in my opinion, it changed a little bit. Talking about design, I love kind of going back to design. It makes it look longer for me. Maybe it's just because this is
Changes the view, I
Change
think.
the-
Changes your
yeah.
view a little bit, doesn't it?
changed the way it looks
So that's the normal 900 spoiler. That's what they all had.
with the very honest
Yeah.
train.
Whereas the whale tail, like on mine,
Yeah.
was an option one.
And I'll be honest, this one came with the whale tail, which I think it was an option which was fitted
Dealers.
by the dealers in
Yeah.
the UK. It didn't come from the factory
No,
with one.
no, very few
So
options from the factory.
This came with a whale tail, but when we were restoring it, we had a conversation with Simon about where we wanted to go, and I actually wanted to take it back because it hasn't got the skirts.
Yeah, it
I wanted
doesn't
to take
balance.
it back
Yeah.
to looking the way that it would have come from the
Yeah,
factory. So it's got the original factory spoiler. I still have the whale tail, but I think for me, it balances better
Yeah, it does,
with the smaller spoiler on the back of it.
Yeah.
That's a major change, not
Yeah,
having the body side
yeah.
cladding.
It would be unbalanced, I think, if you had the whale tail without the body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably the reason
Yeah.
why it looks longer as well.
But
Very,
you've got the 16-inch option wheels on, which
I have got the 16-inch option wheels on.
These are very rare and very expensive now.
The other thing which is different to the way it would have come from the factory, but I believe it was also a dealer fit option, are
Yeah, they were
these
dealer fit,
these covers for the vents on the side.
Mm-hmm.
Now it came without those. My car actually came without those originally,
Mm-hmm.
but again, it was a choice we made when we were doing the restoration. I
like
think
them.
having them in
Yeah,
body
I like
colour
them, yeah.
just cleans the side up. You end up with this slab of black plastic without them that looks a bit jarring,
nice,
particularly again without a black body
Yeah,
kit.
yeah.
And having it in body colour, I think, sets it off quite nicely.
Should we go for a drive?
Let's.
Yes. Tom, have you done any long trips with this?
No, I haven't done any really long trips with it. We've been to sort of Shropshire. So I guess the longest trips have been sort of 2-3 hours at a time,
Okay.
but no multi-day trips.
It's nice. It has plenty of space in the back. It's quite comfortable as well. Much little car.
What I'm enjoying is the exhaust note, because you've got that Abbott Racing exhaust on this. It's got a lovely sound to it.
It's got a lovely burble
Yeah.
at idle,
Yeah.
but as you'll see in a minute,
not too
when you're driving along, there's no drone, it's extremely well designed.
Mm-hmm.
Always entertaining.
Always.
The way it opens is always cool.
It's the-
Boost controller here,
Yep.
which is what gives it 10 horsepower more, isn't it? And that was standard fit, wasn't it, on the Ruby?
Oh, standard on the Ruby and the
Yeah.
Carlsson.
Yeah, yeah. And of course air conditioning, which normally there's a big space here on a 900, but this is air conditioned and working.
And working, yeah, and you can see the intercooler for the air conditioning sits in here where the normal air intake is with a
Yeah.
little flap on it, so this has got that there. And yeah, it blows nice and cold.
So the Abbott stuff then is camshafts.
Camshafts in the engine, potentially the ECU, but I can't verify that. It
Yeah.
looks like a red box to me.
It's
and hard to
boosting well
tell.
on the gauge,
But it's
isn't it?
certainly boosting extremely
Yeah.
well, yeah. Intercooler
Which is
That-
bigger.
and the springs, which you can't see, but obviously tucked in the bits and pieces. and not Abbott, but done when we were restoring it. There was a bit of play in the shaft for the turbo, so we took the opportunity to replace the complete turbo. So that's a brand new turbo in it.
Cool.
That's cool. You've done so much work on this car. It's impressive, isn't it? And it's unique. Again, another unique machine
Well, I
around.
mean, the 900 is unique enough, but now we're talking the last 150 special editions, and only how many on the road?
Well, according to the register, around about 30.
So one of 30, which is pretty impressive.
I love those little details. You know?
It's still there after all this time.
Yeah. Very cool. Show me the book. You got the book, don't you? Let's have a look
Well, I've
at
got two little bits of interesting history to go with the car. The first one is it came with the original leather wallet that was issued to the car when it was new, which contains the price list and bits and pieces from the original owner, including the chap who bought it from the company back in 1995. Obviously had a Cobra alarm system fitted to it. I made a little book about the restoration, and so it starts with the car, and that
How
was
it was.
that
Look
was
at
that was the day I picked it up from the guy who had it in one of the outbuildings at his house,
What a transformation.
and that's how it looked. And as I said, one of the nice things about the Ruby is even if you go and see one, okay, the paint fades, almost red paint fades after a while, but you can see with no body kit, it's very quick to see what the condition of things like the sills are, because you can see there's nothing to hide it. So all the bits that we found doing the restoration, it's all surface.
Surface
Most of it's
corrosion here
surface
and there, but
rust, and there were very few bits of major rust. There were a couple of little bits which needed taking
Here and
care
there,
of,
yeah.
but again, very minor. And then once you'd cleaned up and refurbished the parts, 99% of them could go straight back on again because it was literally surface corrosion.
Surface corrosion, yeah. So Tom, the car will be here with us at Gasoline Juice from now on.
Yes.
For a couple of weeks on display. So if you guys want to see the car, contact ourselves, contact Tom, and then you can come here, have a look, book an appointment and see this car in person, and eventually you can take it home. So thank you so much, guys. Thanks, Tom.
And thank you, Caesar. Thank you very
And
much.
See you around. See you guys around as well.
One, two,